Hello and welcome to Clinically Unscripted, the podcast where we bring unfiltered, real conversations in clinical research to light so others can learn and avoid same missteps. We host industry professionals as they share untold stories, behind the scene moments that reshaped how they work and think. I'm your host, Obi, and today I'm excited to introduce a guest whose work sits right at the intersection of clinical operations, workforce development, and real world site execution. Joining me today is Mariana Costa de Abelda. She is a clinical operations specialist and a consultant with over 15 years of experience. So her goal is to empower clinicians, investigators to transform their medical practices into professional, governance-driven research sites. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Mariana, and I'm grateful that you are here today. Welcome to Clinically Unscripted.
You, Obi. That's a really warm and good introduction. I appreciate actually you inviting me to participate. I'm really happy to
Sure.
be here. It's a really nice first thing for me to do, participate in a podcast. I've been working in the industry for a while now, but always focusing on just
Yeah.
getting my job done in any
Yeah.
of the roles that I participated. So this will be probably really fun.
Well, I mean, that's why Clinical Unscripted started in the first place, because in our industry we are working, and there are limited opportunities for us to just exchange insights to discuss the real things that happen on the ground. You know what I mean? So just to jump into the big operational questions, I like to start with a bit of a context. You've worked across sites, CROs, and sponsors, right? And you've seen clinical operations from multiple lenses. I want to talk about some of the persistent tensions and frictions that we see in the industry, especially between the sponsors, the CROs, and the sites. From your perspective, what would you say are the most misunderstood pain points between the sites, CROs, and sponsors?
Okay, that's really a good question to get started. And as you said, I've worked for both of the sites, and I started my career at a site and then I progressed as a CRA. So I worked in other roles in sponsors and CROs as well. And always with this connection of monitoring, running trials, understanding operations. And there is a lot of pain points. Of course, we could be talking here for a lot of time, but I could say that there are different maybe priorities that people are working in their own groups. And sometimes the stakeholders can kind of forget to think about the different perspectives
Yeah.
and not realize what the other group priorities. So I would say, for example, in startup, in the CRO or sponsors, they have their metrics. They want a ethical approval by a certain date. They want first site activation, and then the first patient in. So that's their main goal to achieve and get the project started. While on site, they also have the ethical approvals and all of those things, but mostly they are trying to get sorted with their operations, their workflows and the resourcing and everything that entails getting the patient on site. Because the site's priority, it's how the patient experience will be on site, and it should be a good experience.
Yeah.
But I think the timelines, there is a misunderstanding, for example, when the sponsors are providing the site with the protocol and a couple of documents to get started on an SIV. And sometimes I feel some documents can come a little bit late in the process. For example, I've seen pharmacy manuals or laboratory manuals or things that are really important for the site to understand what they have to do on the floor with the patients coming a little bit late in the process. So in the sponsor mind, they are ready because they have the approvals. In the site side of things is not quite that. They need the CRF, the EDC blank, for example, to be able to create their source document templates. They need the lab manual, the pharmacy manual, and or any other vendor manuals to understand how to navigate systems and things like that. So they need more time to prepare. I think that would be the first misunderstanding, which is each one of these silos thinking in a different priority. If I could say another one would be maybe budget negotiation and resourcing understanding. I think we hear a lot about frustrations in terms of how much workload both CROs and sponsor teams have, but most sites. So they need to get sorted and prepared with their resources, and how many is a study coordinator is going to be enough? Do I need more people to collect bloods, or do we need unblinded staff, so additional resources. How many patients they need to recruit, and then manage how many investigators they need to get the visits with the patients done. So they have to calculate all of those things. And I think there is a misunderstanding on when the sponsors usually provide the budget to the site with a protocol. And again, those documents that will come a little bit later in the process, like a lab manual, a pharmacy manual, and all of those things, will tell a lot to the site, the processes and how labor
Yeah.
intense the protocol will be. And even when you have all of those documents, they usually don't understand the exactly amount
Yeah.
of work that they will have to do.
A quick question around there. Are there trainings that are specifically targeted for site onboarding during this whole handoffs?
Yeah, I don't see that a lot. I think there is a lot of training like focused on the protocol. There are some vendor trainings in terms of which systems we are going to use and what you're expected to do. But this come in the site initiation visit when the budget was already approved and the contracts were already signed. So I think that's this question of yours actually leads us to like, well, that would be very nice to provide the site with a realistic idea of the volume of work that they will have to do. So they would be able to negotiate their budgets and show the sponsors this is the amount of hours and the resources that I will need to conduct the trial. I think it's important. But at the same time, we also know that in sponsors and CROs, their teams are also rushing to get all of these documents ready and out, to get the approvals, to get everything. So I think the startup stage is a very time sensitive thing. And if I could just ask for one thing, I would say maybe just increase the time a little bit, the length of the startup process to get sites prepared for what's coming and to also know all this information. So I think it's a matter of priority alignment, which I also understand. Sponsors, they have their pipeline strategy and the things that we don't know much about, especially the sites won't know. The CROs, they have all their milestones to achieve and the things that they told the sponsors they would deliver. They have their deliverables. And the sites, they want to know exactly what they need to get the patient visits done and done in a way that the patients are having a good experience.
Thank you for ending on that, because my next question was going to build around how much of processes that go into study build up and also some behaviors that you see around the CROs, sponsors, and sites. How much of that contributes to the slowdown of studies the most?
I particularly think this is interesting because there is a lot of rushing in the process of the study startup because there are metrics to achieve. But I really believe that when you rush the startup of something, the kickoff of a project, and you don't properly invest the time to train and onboard people, then consequently, in the long run, there will be a lot of mistakes, a lot of rework and delays because there was a lack of proper time dedicated for the training. So I would say training and boarding and experience for me kind of cascades to other things. And if you go back in time, millennial that used to love the face-to-face trainings, and I know the technology and the world evolved, and today a lot of things is virtual and the technology helps us, but at the same time we lost the connection, I guess. I remember when I started my career that as a CRA we had this very heavy 1 week 10 days group training with the trainer that would be engaging and fun, and you would actually learn, what am I supposed to do here, what is the rationale behind what I'm being asked to do, and what's the process and the importance and all of those things.
With
Today
so
I
much
think
in between quizzes to make people remember whatever you are being
yeah.
trained on,
Yeah, and I believe depending on the training experience, you absorb better information and you understand the importance of a couple of things. Today, for both onboarding a staff on site, in a CRO or in a sponsor, or to onboard anybody on a study, there is this process that is a little bit more rushed because we have deadlines to achieve. And then all of these virtual modules of training that no human being is capable of absorbing and just keeping that information because it's just, I think, too much. And what has actually a lot of value is lost in the middle of all of these things. I just believe in the long run, it slowed down the process because now you rush the startup, people were not actually prepared, and then they get it done. You see all the projects are delivered, we get it done, but there is a little bit of this, the dedication could be a little bit better in the beginning and then would avoid rework or, queries or things that maybe a little bit more training could have.
I'm curious around whether the biggest delays that you've seen are coming from the technologies that are being used. You mentioned they need EDCs, they need ECRFs, sometimes they need IRTs, and also the CRO side, they have so many technologies that are out there right now that
Yeah.
they are using to manage clinical trials, and also has to be in sync with the sponsor for oversight. So now, could it be the technology complexities that are also contributing to these delays, or are we only focusing on the human factors like the time, training gaps, unclear ownership, and also, communication gaps?
Yeah.
Where do you see the biggest delays across these two
Did
arms?
you? I would say the technology could help us when the interface, like the system, it's
Mm,
user friendly. Operations are not involved as much when the
that's the
systems
issue.
are being developed, the platforms are being developed, and the site staff is not involved as well to understand what would work better with the patient. Is this patient friendly? Will they understand what they have to do? So I think there is this part where the setup itself of the platforms are not too user friendly, which makes things difficult. We need better troubleshooting, I guess, for all the systems. I've seen many, many times sites with a patient waiting in the middle
And the
of the
system is
visit, and
down.
then there is an error with a ePro or
Mm,
with a diary, with something that they have to complete there to assess their eligibility or something. And then there is an error that the site doesn't understand how to troubleshoot. And then they are trying to contact the help desk, and the help desk will take a little while to get that sorted.
mm,
So yeah, it's a little bit of the system and a little bit of the process of how this was set up at the beginning. You usually see, like I've seen many times, that the first patients for things are the ones that we ask the sites, keep a little bit of extra time in your patient visit when it's the first patient, like a screening or a baseline visit, because
mm,
certainly as soon as you start using the app or the vendor or whatever technology it is, you
mm.
will probably face a little bit of difficulty in navigating the system, understanding how to do that. Then here we go. It's time lost.
Already mentioned it that technology helps a lot to reduce the complexities of the manual work they used to do in terms of managing patient visits and also managing all those complexities that come with the protocol. But these days, there are so many technologies out there. A site could use company A EDC today, and tomorrow a different sponsor, a different EDC. So, how much complexity does this add to you people, considering the fact that you're changing systems and you have to be retrained on every system because they are not always the same?
That's true. That's true. I have like mixed feelings with technology and all the systems, especially in
Mm,
clinical trials, because I could experience the times that the technology was not that heavy and
mm,
nowadays. So I would say in the past, as you said, the data was not being reviewed and checked basically real time, because that's
mm,
what the data reviews are today. The sponsors are looking at this basically real time. As soon as the data is entered, is available, they can look at it.
mm,
Before, we all know it was like paper CRFs. And if the site had to submit scans or ECG tracings or things like that, they would send in batches via courier, mail. It would take a while for the data to reach the people that would review that data. And the same way back, the queries would come a little bit slower and mostly in batches. So
mm,
the site would have more time to dedicate to the patients, and then a time for admin and data and all of this, and then separate an extra time then to resolve queries.
mm,
I think we had blocks of types of work to do. Today, the way I see is they are asked nowadays, especially with risk-based monitoring, enter the
mm.
data as soon as possible,
Straight
because
up.
we want to review the data. And then the sponsors are looking at this data from different points of view. Different groups are looking at this. And there is like safety group looking at the safety signals and risks. There's the
Mm,
data management group. There's the project management group. And then on top of that, we have the CRAs going on site. Yeah. So the sites are receiving queries constantly, and queries via EDC and questions via email and calls and all of this, while they are just trying to focus on their patients.
on the patients.
Yeah, so I think creates a lot of friction. And again, the sites are not properly trained to use certain systems. So they have to face all the difficulty with troubleshooting and all those things. And yeah, I think in the end of the day, yes, technology helps us speeding up things and advancing medicine and science
Mm,
faster. Yeah, that's a great point. We can look at the data and identify spot risk signals, which is good. We protect the patient's safety and the data integrity because we can spot like processes errors and things like that in the data
mm.
review. But at the same time, we need to arrange a process on how we're
Yeah.
going to review and deal with this data, because I would look at the data and say, is there a trend here to like flag problem, a query to the site? Like, do I see multiple patients with a certain parameter out of range? Okay, this might tell me something. or they're doing a process wrong, or there is a risk signal that is affecting patients, that parameter, that assessment. If it's something isolated, it's mostly likely a transcriptional error or something like that.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's just adjusting the process to the use of
Yeah.
the technology.
No, I appreciate your perspective on this topic because I think this is something that we don't quite hear a lot. We go for conferences and events, and hardly would you see representatives from the site. We most times mostly have representatives from the sponsor side, from the CRO side, but we hardly find representatives from the site that will come and share what I just heard here for the first time. These are real issues. The most
Yeah.
priority or the most important piece of every trial are the patients.
True. That's something that I've experienced of sites being asked, for example, to implement a new. There was like on this case, there was a digital delegation law. So the site has their processes they are used with the paper delegation law, and then suddenly, oh, we would like to pilot a digital delegation law. So
Yeah.
you're adding an extra burden to the site, and now they need to learn how to set
How
up all
to,
the delegation
yeah.
law. And then, oh, we have patient diaries or questionnaires that before used to be paper, and now we have this ePro. Now they need to sit with the patient, train the patient on the use of the ePro and how they are going to receive messages and notifications about when to complete the thing. And then the patients will be like, I don't understand how to use this. It can be frustrating
Oh,
for the
yeah,
sites and patients. So I think we should probably just dedicate more time again during that startup period to
yeah.
focus on the better training and onboarding for both site staff, patients, and everybody that will actually use the systems.
I agree. I
And
agree.
usually the sites are the ones that they are the ones doing everything, so they experience more of what the technology
You
issues
can do
can
for them. Yeah.
be. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Mariana. You've spent a lot of time in training teams, if I can recall. Yeah. And building, you've also spent some time building processes that support good clinical operations. I want to give you an opportunity right now because I know there are lots of misconceptions about the clinical operations. Are there some misconceptions that you've heard that you would love to challenge or reframe? Now is
Ooh.
your chance.
I would, yeah, I do have a passion to help the sites and get them a better picture and idea what to expect, especially new sites. If there is a new site, a new doctor investigator starting a clinical research, especially the ones that are experienced with academic research or investigator
Mm,
initiatives studies, when they get on board on a clinical research, a sponsored clinical trials, things are quite different. So they are not prepared for what's coming, and I
coming.
really like to give them a better idea and guide them through the process. Now, I think most of the protocols, okay, of course, we do have GCP. Sites should follow the protocol as it's
Mm,
written and approved by ethics committee. I understand that. But I think sponsors see that the protocol can be uniformly conducted by all sites. Same
mm,
way, no issues will occur. But most of the time, what you see is maybe a protocol that was designed in a certain way is good for like a big hospital with structure, with resources and all of those
mm,
things. And it's not actually feasible for a small community center or something like that. And the protocols are written by scientists and statisticians and medical writers. And sometimes operational leads get involved in the review of that protocol that was written, but not as often we see operations and the sites, some sites representation during the writing of the protocol to give
mm,
them a little bit more
mm.
from their point of view. This is the
Oh,
frictions that I see here. This is the things that I don't think are realistically considering standard of care, what
mm.
different sites will do in their practice, in their workflows, how
Because
much
in the end, they have better knowledge and
they know
visibility
how it
around
works.
how it will work in the site.
Yeah, because they know their patients. They know exactly what the patients need, the assessments that are better to evaluate certain things. The standard of care, they look at eligibility criteria and they say,
Mm,
this can complicate things for me to find patients. Is this like really necessary for your trial? So I
mm,
think there are a couple of points that could have more input from sites representatives. Because at the end of the day, when you go for operations, then you see all of the things that people could not anticipate. So you see feasibilities that are sent to
mm,
sites. There is a questionnaire, and then the questions are very like broad. And then
mm.
they have a protocol synopsis at the time of the feasibility questionnaire. The actual final protocol will come usually a little bit later. And then the site will have a site selection visit. They know a protocol synopsis. They have a little bit of information, but it's not enough for them to assess operationally, will this work? And then when the study starts, is that when they realize, oh, this is very labor intense. I wasn't expecting all of that. And then, yeah, it can create a lot of frustration. And a lot of miscommunication and misalignment, because now they're trying to fix the things that didn't anticipate.
Yeah.
I guess.
So could this qualify to something I would consider logically sound on paper, but would not hold up in real world execution?
Yeah, because the scientists, they create like this great design, science speaking, but operationally sometimes it's not as feasible as they think. And the problem is that they are not in close contact with the site's reality.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a little bit of that. Like, I will give you a very silly example of something that it wasn't with a project of mine, but I heard that there is this population in a trial, a specific population that they were looking for. That most of this population of these patients, they used to work like on mine sites, on places that during their work time, they were not allowed to use their phones. They should not use their phones. And they had a lot of questionnaires to complete on their phones. So at the end of the day, there was a lot of deviations because these patients were missing the questionnaires because nobody thought like the characteristics of that patient population, which was then realized afterwards. And then you have to create an amendment and try to fix that. And when you're already like ongoing. So this little thing sometimes can seem really silly, but at the end of the day, it does have an impact.
Thanks a lot, Mariana, for sharing that story. This is exactly why Clinically Unscripted was made, to hear some of these behind the scene moments that we don't see in the news, we don't see on paper. Who would have known? So, and if you're listening to this podcast, this is a story you could share with your team and maybe helps you in your next trial. So I want to shift a little bit into technology for a moment. I know we've talked about technology sometime. What are the most important, most relevant technologies that you think would actually help the sites the most to reduce friction?
Okay, so we have a bunch of systems that slowly started to be implemented. Some are not as useful to the site. So CTMS is a big one in sponsors and CROs because that's their management system. They have the entire project there and all the trackers and everything that they can pull reports and things. This is very important to them. Not that they are not important to sites. I really would recommend sites to also have some form of CTMS because they could have the same access to reports and things important for them to control payments and missing visits and things to them as well. But I would say, well, EDC, we cannot, ignore EDC. It's very important. IRT or IWRS or RTSM, they change the acronym all the time, but basically all the systems are investigational product management and patient management. I think this is really relevant because that's how the sites can give sponsors information about the investigational product. We can control inventory. That one actually makes sites' life easier because the IRT, IWRS, it controls the investigational product inventory and automatically triggers, if it's working properly, it automatically triggers the next shipment. So that takes a little bit of the work from the site to be constantly looking at inventory and thinking, do I need to order more?
So
and then have a second process of ordering more things, for example. We don't have that as much for laboratory kits, for example. They receive a first shipment, and then they are responsible for controlling their inventory and ordering more. When they are still like looking at, that depends on how many patients are still coming. So they have to do all these manual calculations to how many more kits I should order. So they lack that. So I think RT is useful in that sense. It gives sponsors a good idea of like how many patients are screened at this point in my study and screen failures and all those things. So they can use that data in a way to manage the project. ePros, I have a mixed feeling with ePros as well because I still didn't see an ePro that made the patient life actually easier. I'm not yet convinced. Most of the time the sites are like, can this just be paper? Because I don't need to train the patient. It's just, the patient gets a paper, completes there like in 5 seconds and then brings something. I don't know. yeah, it is depending on the protocol design and when they will
Mm,
have to complete those things and
mm.
questionnaires and diaries. It might, but yeah, I'm not convinced 100% yet. I would
Talk the
say
talk.
I might vote in favor of paper on that one, but still. But at the same time, depending on the data, this also is
Yeah.
important for them to evaluate.
Yeah.
So we cannot get rid of it. All the portals, sponsor portals that they try to, the
Mm,
intention I think is good behind the idea of using a study portal where
mm,
all the study documents are available and communications and newsletters and a lot of resources to the site and links all put together.
mm.
The idea behind it's really good, but I never heard about a site that was overly excited about, yeah, study portal. It's just one more login for them. Sorry. Uh, yeah, I don't think so.
Just know
Um,
that they are going to come for you.
Sorry.
It's a personal feedback.
It's my
Personal
opinion. The
opinion.
sites can tell their opinion. I don't know. And then we have like imaging
Mm,
portals. I think these are good. These are really helpful
really
because
helpful.
before, okay, there is a positive side of sending the scans in batches and then
Mm,
gaining time before getting queries. But I think today, yeah, you just get the scans from your radiology or
mm.
some other things and then you just upload. I think that makes it
Yeah,
easier. You
makes a
just need
lot.
a little bit time to set up. I think, yeah, if I could suggest one system for sites,
Mm,
would be something like the sponsors, most of the sponsors and CROs have, which is all the dashboards. Because then they collect all of this data and then it turns into dashboards that they can evaluate. So if you learn how to use those dashboards, then you focus your attention on what the issues are or where
mm.
inefficiencies are. Because you look
True.
at, oh, time to enter the data. Then a PI could have a great oversight if they just had like the system with all the dashboards. I posted about this in my LinkedIn account
Mm,
once because imagine instead of like being chasing study coordinators, what is the status of this, or
mm.
asking the CRAs, or they could just look at that dashboard and say, okay,
And
for
see
this project,
where.
data entry looks good, no issues, not many
Mm,
queries. While for the other project, it's the complete opposite. What could be the root cause? Oh, I have two different study coordinators working, one in one project, one in another project. Does that mean
mm,
that that second study coordinator needs extra training or attention?
mm.
Or is it the project that is very complete? You can
Yeah.
maybe if the sites had some form of system where all this data that they are creating and giving to the sponsors could go back to them in a form of a dashboard because the sponsors have that dashboard.
Oh,
I know some
that's
CTMS,
really a
if the
good
sites use, they
recommendation.
will have, but it's not as fancy and,
Yeah, that's really a
so
great recommendation. So at the moment, the sites do not have visibility of the reports and dashboards that the sponsors and CROs have.
it depends on what they're using. So I'm not gonna name systems or anything, but I know
Mm,
some systems that if the site decide to purchase them or use them,
mm,
it depends on their data entry on the system to get the dashboards. But
mm,
for example, data entry metrics, they don't have an interface. If they have a system, they still don't have the interface with their system and EDC to
mm,
gather that information. So this is in the sponsor hands. So if you have a good CRA, the CRA should come with this
mm,
dashboard and with this data and inform the PI during their visit. Your data
mm.
entry metrics, you are entering data in 3 business days. Awesome. Well done. This and that. But it would be just easier if somehow
They
sites were
had,
giving that
yeah,
dashboard. I don't know,
yeah.
in a certain frequency or just get access. I don't know how. But yeah, just brainstorming things that could actually help them to address things that the inefficiencies that they need to address instead of just looking everywhere and trying to
Mm.
find like, oh, what's the status, and because it's too many things, too many systems, it's a lot of places to look at. Just is how
Yeah.
I, for my trials in the operations that I'm
Mm.
looking at and managing, that's what I do on a weekly basis. I sit and I look at all these reports and dashboards and I look for
From different
trends.
systems.
And then I look for trends and I'm like, this person addressed this. This is what I think
Mm.
can be. And then you have conversations with the site about processes and training and
Mm.
you understand how they operate. And then you find root causes for that signal,
For
that
the
trend. And then you
mm.
fix. And then move on. The
Next.
next thing. Yeah. I don't know. I might be too simplistic my point of view, but I think yeah.
There are certain things you've mentioned that I've never heard, and I've been in the industry for I think 12 years. I've
Mm,
never heard because I'm working in commercial, and everybody we are seeing or we are interacting with are either sites or no, not site, or either CROs or sponsors. I've hardly had any representation from sites say these things. It feels like they are just working for either. And I wish we had time to talk about how a single site could be overburdened by multiple trials and how much less of a quality time that devotes to the patients and what
yeah.
that causes the patients.
Yeah. Sometimes I think they should shift a little bit where they want to invest and heavily invest in 5 good sites and explore the startup time better. And
Mm,
then they get up and running and then they will enroll the patients and then the quality will come as a result. But I think, yeah, we're still a way to go in terms of how much the sites are involved in the planning of the study to give their opinion on things that are operationally feasible or not.
mm.
Because yeah, if it's a really interesting experience to just be sitting on a site and observing everything that they're doing. It's insane. The amount of work that these people do, it's admirable, and they're dealing with patients. It's these people have hopes or problems and things that they're still carrying that as well on top of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Which
What,
people
what, what,
from CROs
what,
and sponsors, they're not looking at that part.
yeah, what would you say about SDVs?
I agree with spending less time, but the process of SDR, because there is a difference, SDR, SDV. SDR is source document review, and SDV, source document verification. The review is still being done by the CRAs for more patients,
Mm,
while the SDV can be reduced, because SDV is just like ticking the box that the data equals what is in source.
yeah.
And these chances are that the transcription of the data from the source to EDC, we don't see many errors. It doesn't justify taking 100% of the data
Mm,
points. But the data reviewing source still has to occur because that's where you see errors of processes and things that were not done
mm.
and or done incorrectly, and then you retrain the site on the process.
And the
I think at the
process.
end of the day, risk-based monitoring is just shifting the attention to trends and risks
That
instead
matter
of
the
like
most.
every little data point. Because at the end of the
Mm,
day, you don't need to look at
waste of
everything.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And hopefully, when we have like the AI, that will be a good one. I should have said that. One thing that will be useful is when the AI systems can collect the data straight from their electronic health records, EMRs, and all,
Hmm.
and throw in the EDC. And then you remove the STV part. No more STV
No
because
more
the data.
SDV. One last question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to anyone that is interested in joining clinical operations?
Thank you for asking that. My training, so I developed thinking of all of that and thinking how can you help, especially new study coordinators, new people onboarding the clinical research industry, and they will usually look for a site position first, an entry
Yeah.
level site position first. So I thought about that group of people, or new investigators wanting to explore clinical research. And I created this training where I explain all of the clinical research processes at a site,
Hmm.
um, from the operations perspective, from like
Perspective.
what are you actually doing, like the step
Hmm.
by step of each one of these processes. So
Hmm.
I created that. It's currently available in Udemy. It's called Clinical Trials Site Operations.
Hmm.
I can definitely share with you the link.
Yes, please.
And it's available for anyone that is interested, that is curious. And I really think that, as you said, at the end of the day, what matters is the people working in this industry. And it's a very interesting industry to work for. There is a meaning behind what we're doing, and
Yeah.
it's super exciting. And as any job, as any industry, we do have things that can be better or things that are amazing and things that we are still discovering. And it's not different clinical research. But definitely, everyone should think about that as an option, especially the new grads in health sciences
Yeah.
and the new doctors over there that think it can sound really complicated, but at the end of the day, it's not complicated. You just have to get a better sense of what the processes are and what is
Yeah.
expected of you, and then everybody can manage that. Yeah, it's a good pleasure to be
Thank you.
here, and I had really, really a lot of fun. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and perspective with us today. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Clinically Unscripted. If you found value in this conversation, Be sure to find Mariana on LinkedIn, subscribe and follow her, and also follow me myself also. And you can share this podcast with a colleague and join us next time as we continue to explore what it truly takes to build sustainable, high quality clinical research operations. Next time, bye bye.
Thanks.